Hi everybody, it's Ann with Art on the Creek, and it's Saturday, and that means it is time for a review. I hope that when I am done with this review, you can still get this particular item. It is the Schmincke Horadam Aquarel Watercolor Limited Edition Metal Box Set. There are 12 paints in here, and Schmincke Horadam is a very well-renowned artist brand. So let's open this up and let's see what you think. Now I have had mine for a while, so I'm going to open it up and show you what's in here. However, remember this set has been used and loved. I really go to it quite often. The tin on it is fabulous. Schmincke is a German product, and it's very well made, very strong. You will also get the finger hold back here in case you wanted to take it with you and use it in a plein air or standing up situation. You have 4 mixing wells here, and I believe there are 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mixing wells here, as well as in most of these, you can lift out the paints and use the mixing space here. So you have a total of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 mixing wells. So that's very extensive. It's quite a lot. And the really fun thing about this set is it comes with a full-size brush. It's a Da Vinci Cosmotop. It's got a really nice point to it. I believe I touched on this one on my review of paintbrushes. I'll link to that in the description. I'm getting a shadow here, sorry about that. Trying not to give you guys a glare from the ring light and do this at the same time. So there you go, you can see the point on that. It's really quite nice. Okay, so let's get into it. You get this brush, like I said, and here's the description that comes with. This side is in German. Here's some English here. Please remove water from pans after use. You know, that's something I do want to talk about. If you are in a humid climate, you really do want to make sure your pans are dry before you seal them. Even though I'm in the ever dry Colorado, I always leave my paints open, and then I come down and I clean my studio the next day before I paint again. And sometimes I'll clean the palettes up, sometimes I won't. I did clean this up so that I could show you guys what it looks like. But you never want to close up your paints when they're wet. They can get moldy, they can go bad. You'll know if they've gone bad because it is a distinct smell. It kind of smells sulfury like rotten eggs. That it retails for $119. Cheap Joe's in America right now has it for $69.69 on sale. Their regular price is $77.39. So it's a really good buy right now. You're getting 12 Schmincke Horadam watercolors, which is a really great way to get into this brand. It's got a nice range of colors. I will let you know what you have here. You've got a lemon yellow, cadmium yellow light, cadmium red light, permanent carmine, ultramarine blue, Prussian blue, phthalo green, permanent green olive, yellow ochre, English Venetian red, sepia brown, and ivory black. Now I don't usually use the ivory black, but since there's no indigo in this set, I have used it on occasion to kind of get an indigo out by mixing the Prussian in the black or the ultramarine in the black. You can get a great range of grays using the sepia and the blues there, so there's quite a lot of range that you have here. Just for fun, I thought what we could do today is we'll swatch them out, and I'll go ahead and do that again here so that you can see. And then let's paint. I have a drawing here that I did a long time ago of Pluto. So I thought we could just paint him on some watercolor paper, and you can see how these blend because Pluto's got some good shading in here, and it's good simple primary color palette, so with some blues and blacks. So let's get to that and let's see what we can come up with. I'm going to go ahead and swatch them out here with the brush that it came with on the paper that they gave you. So using the lemon yellow, they re-wet really easily. These pans are dry, and I have not sprayed them in preparation for this video. So what I'm going to do is to get that wet and then just bring some water up from the bottom here. And then we'll put some more pigment on the top. Okay, I'll try and do that equally on each one. So that's the lemon yellow. Here comes the cadmium yellow light. This is the permanent carmine over here. This is a really good substitution for alizarin crimson. I always like to have that in my palette because when you're painting animals or any kind of portraits, it's a really nice idea to have that good blood red in your palette. And this is the cadmium red light. These two are inverted on my palette here. This one goes with this one, and this one comes over here. Okay, so now let's do, in fact, these are all kind of screwy, I think. Here, this one is the ultramarine here, yes. So they've all kind of gotten a little bit out of order. There's ultramarine, and then we'll do the phthalo blue. I'm sorry, Prussian blue. And now let's do that phthalo green. Phthalo green and emerald green are colors I don't really use too often. But they're good to have because you can tone them down and use them in other mixes. And this one here is the permanent olive. I really like this one. I use this one quite a bit. I like having a convenience green. And whereas I usually like sap green, this one is just a little more ruddy. And I like that because it works very well with the natural landscape. Yellow ochre, gotta have yellow ochre. And this English red reminds me a lot of the Daniel Smith and M. Graham colors here because it's almost opaque. It's really got a nice tone to it. And then here we have the sepia, which is just such a lovely color. It's almost, I really love it. It's just a good neutral gray brown. And then your ivory black. And there are our swatches. Since this is a little bit runny here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay a paper towel across the bottom here. Just kind of pick some of those up. And there you can see those swatches a little bit. Nice, vibrant color range, good transparency. These are just a pleasure to use. If you're looking for a way to get into the Schmincke Horadam line, this is really a great way to do it. You've got just enough colors, a lot of mixing range. You'll really be able to expand this range by mixing colors, and it's just a pleasure to work with. The palette just doesn't need to re-wet. I love that it comes with a full-size brush, and the palette is just beautiful. It's very easy to work with. So let me set this aside, and now let's get to drawing Pluto. I've sped this part up because mainly I want to focus on the performance of the paints, but I will talk a little bit about sketching some Disney characters. They're really easy to do. I don't mean to belittle the Disney artists at all, because they go through extensive training, and there's quite a lot that goes into these characters, and there's a reason they're beloved. They're so familiar to us. I'm not going to do a perfect Pluto here, but what I can do is to show you basically the way that I draw Disney characters. I like to start with the nose and the eyes and then work out from there. So I like that the lines are really simple and bold, and I am drawing from the drawing that I did beforehand, so it's not going to be 100% accurate, because the drawing I did originally wasn't 100% accurate. But, you know, and if you're working with children who want to get into art, Disney characters is a great way to get started. That's how I got started getting interested in drawing things. I used to love drawing Mickey Mouse when I was a kid. You can certainly trace, use a light box or some tracing, or, you know, you can even tape it to a window. It's so easy to do. Just take whatever you want to trace, tape it to the window. I like to use painter's tape or washi tape. And then you just put the paper that you're going to paint on. So in this case, it would be a sheet of watercolor paper. Tape it over that, and then you can see through with the light coming through the window very easily, and that's a real good way to trace. That's the way I always did it when I was a child, because we did not have a light box in my home growing up. Another great way to replicate art is to do it with the grid method, and that's where you draw a grid over your reference, and then you draw the grid faintly on your own paper and replicate what is in each square. So that's a really good way to work on your accuracy. I just like drawing Disney characters. They're just so fun. Pluto has always been one of my favorites, and I just thought Mickey was so lucky to have such a derfy dog. I love him, and I kind of think he's a yellow lab. What do you think? Mention in the comments, what do you think Pluto is? And for that matter, what kind of dog do you think Goofy is? I was never able to tell with Goofy. But then again, that just lends to Goofy's mystique and adds to his charm. I sure like how goofy he is, and I love it when he does his pratfalls, and I just like the way he says gorshk. But anyway, back to Pluto here. He's the ever loyal pet of Mickey, and he's always getting into trouble, but he means well all the time. So let's get rid of that hump on his back a little bit and taper that down. And then we'll go ahead and add his legs in here. We're just real quickly doing the sketch. Now, one thing I want to talk about are some supplies that everyone should have in their arsenal. This first one I'm playing with here is called a kneaded eraser. If you don't have one, I highly recommend getting one. Also, the pencil I use is just a click pencil. These are the kind that are available in the school supply aisle. They're just reliable, and I always really love them. An eraser that is a high polymer eraser. These are wonderful to have because when you use them, since they're vinyl, they don't smudge your work. A Westcott drafting brush. I love these. It keeps me from using my hands to clear my crumbs off the paper, the erasure crumbs, and then it won't smear. Here's this kneaded eraser in action. All you do is you knead it to clean it, and then you can roll it across your work and lighten those lines so that they're not as prominent. And then you can pinch it and shape it into little detail shapes and get into small areas and erase that way. I have heard that some people have had issues with it leaving oil on kind of an oily residue on the watercolor paper, but I've never had that happen. I've always bought the Prismacolor brand. I'm sure there are other brands out there. For that matter, I bet there's other brands of drafting brushes too. I just like the Westcott one. So now back to Pluto. Here we are. We're just going to do some wet on wet here. And we'll get his body going just with a clear wash of water. And when you do wet on wet, you want to make sure you have enough water on there so that it just makes a glaze. You want to be able to see the sheen of the water, but you don't want it to be puddled. And now that we've got the drawing finished and we're ready to paint, I'm going to go ahead and start with that cadmium yellow. Let's see if we can kind of dive in here, and I'll slow it down so you can see how these paints perform. Not being too careful, just getting some color down because I do want to go over this in yet another color. Now we're going to go in with that yellow ochre, and this will give us a good shaded gradient of yellow. That's what I want to say. some more of the cadmium in there. But I want to show you how well these colors blend. And of course, when you're using good paper, there's never a problem. But I really like how these colors work. So we're just bringing some of this yellow ochre in with this cadmium yellow light to get Pluto's body all blended together. And then I'm going to add some of the sepia, just a very little bit. I'm going to go under his arm here. And right here on that start there. A little bit more sepia down here and maybe under the collar. Sorry, Pluto, I gave you a little bit of a hunchback this time. All right, so there's that. And now let's do the same up here on his neck. We've got enough space between the collar and his neck that we can go ahead and get this this color laid down without any issues. And I want to go in with some of that sepia again to kind of get that shadow. Under his neck, and I do like to blend on the paper. So we'll just pull that pigment out. All right, and there's our little Pluto's body. Now let's go ahead and go in and do his tongue. First of all, I'm going to go in with the cadmium red light. It's going to pull a little bit orange. So what I want to do is just add a touch of the carmine. So that will kind of give me a corally pink. And now I'm doing this wet on dry here. I want the middle of his tongue to stay this color. My brush has got some flyaway hairs today. This Cosmotop is a really nice line of brushes. And I was so excited when they were willing to include a Da Vinci in with this. Now we'll add more of the permanent carmine into that mix, and we'll do the shaded part of his tongue, which is just up here. I'm just dotting the color in. And I'll zoom in so you can see what's happening here. I'm just dropping the color in wet on wet, kind of coming down where that fold in the dog's tongue would be, down the center, and then up toward the back where it would be darker. And that's it for his tongue right now. So now let's take a look at what else could we paint here while this is still drying. Let's look at the ears. The pigments are rich and strong. Like I said, the paints re-wet incredibly well. Very easy to use this set. Sorry, there we go. We left some highlights there. And now I'll rinse off my brush and do it again so that you can see on this side. I'm coming up under here with the shadow first. Leaving a small highlight in the middle and on the edge. And you want to make it dark up under the fold here. And having that blue show through will really help us. So let's put this here. Now the highlight of the lip would be down here, so I'm just putting the pigment up here on the sides. And then I'll get the brush wet and very carefully pull that pigment toward the center. Need a little bit more on my brush here. There we go. Now I see a little spot there that I didn't quite connect, so I will pull this up with some yellow ochre, and then we'll go back in there with some of the sepia. I'll put another glaze over that, but for now we'll just add water. Now for the back of his mouth, that is just all black, but I want to go in first with the sepia. Blah, blah. It's a nice real neutral brown color. I think I'm going to be able to do this whole thing with this brush. I hope so. There we go. The ultramarine blue. And we'll go back in with the sepia on top of that. So there, you can see that mixed a really nice black-brown without having to have a harsh black right there. I wanted to stop that because it was leaching into his lip. Let's see if I can keep this separate. Okay, now let's take a look at his nose. Now, whenever I do any animal nose or dog nose in black, we're going to go ahead and put the highlight in first, and that is going to be blue. Put it all the way across the top. And then fill in the entire nose. And in this case, Sir Pluto, we're going to drop in some more sepia. A little too much water in that. There we go. And focusing this in a C shape at the bottom so that we don't lose that highlight. There. Now, just so that dries exactly the way I want it to, I'm going to go ahead and heat that with a heat tool so that that stops migrating. There. And now, since that is good and dry, let's go ahead and do his face. I'm going to start again with that cadmium yellow. If you ever want to practice ink and wash, cartoon characters are really a fun way to do that. And that's what we're going to end up doing with this guy here. Just being careful not to disturb the ears or the nose. All right, now let's get into the yellow ochre again. Just putting the pigment on the parts that'll be farthest away from us. And then I'll come back in with a damp brush and blend those together. And that way we'll be able to keep that cadmium yellow from, keep it showing through, but have that ruddiness of the yellow ochre toward the background to create the 3D effect of our little pup. Okay, liking that. Now I'm going to go in with some sepia again, and this time we're going to do these little smile lines. And these little lines over his nose, and I guess he has 2 of them. Okay, now I'm going to darken his nose a little bit. And come in here with some ultramarine. And now let's get our heat tool. I think he's looking pretty cute, folks. All right, now I want to put, for his eyes, I want to do a very light wash of the ultramarine. So I've got some here, you can see, really getting it really thin on my brush, rolling off the excess. And then this will go to shape the eyes. Don't have quite enough pigment on there. There we go. You have to remember that watercolor dries lighter, and so there is that shift. So you do want this just a little bit darker than you think you need it. But no white of the eye is ever really white, even on a cartoon. Well, some cartoons. And what we're gonna do is, I've got a clean brush again, and I've just wiped it off, and now we're just going to blend this into the center to get rid of that hard line a little bit. Zoom in so you can see how this looks. Just kind of disturbing that pigment a little. So you can see it's just a shading of the blue around the edges there. Now while that's drying, let's go down and take a look at the collar. I did get the fur up into the collar just a little. Let's see if we can smooth this out. And we can. So now Pluto's collar is kind of a lime green. Let's go with that emerald green. Just because I said I never use it, let's go ahead and use it. Not an emerald green, they call it a phthalo green. We'll do the first glaze in this. And then once again, I think I'll come in with that sepia and add the shadows to it. And we'll just mix those together here. A little bit of that green on my brush. All right, now let's go back in and do his eyes. And for this case, I am going to use that ivory black. Just very carefully. I've got a pretty thick pigment on here. Let me reshape my brush here. That didn't really help. Time for some brush care on this one. And despite the brush kind of splaying out quite a bit, I was able to get some good detail in there. So for the most part, he's done. Let's just give him a dry, and then we'll go ahead and use the ink pen on him. And actually, before we do that, you know, I'd like to do just a little bit of a background, and I think I want to do some of this ultramarine blue. I'm going to skip through this part a little bit quickly here. What I'm doing is just getting the background wet. I'm working in sections, and then I'm depositing bits of pigment down. So you can see I'm getting the brush close to Pluto but not touching him. I did dry him thoroughly before I started this. And then we'll just get that the water down, and then I'll add some pigment. I go back and forth between the ultramarine blue and the Prussian blue just to kind of give it a little bit more oomph, a little bit of dimension to the background, some texture. And we'll skip ahead to see what it looks like when it's done. There we go, Pluto. Now let's go ahead and dry the whole thing. All right, the ink pen I'm going to use today is this one. It's a Kuretake pen, Fudagokochi. The reason I like it, it's not waterproof, but the tip is, as I hope you can see, I've got all these shadows today, I'm so sorry. The tip is kind of like a brush tip. So let's start at the top and do some outlining. This portion will be sped up as well because it's really pretty straightforward. I'm just using that pen to do the outlining. Like I said, it's not a waterproof pen, but I do like the nib is quite flexible and you can vary the line width. A good thing you can do, one of the really fun things that I like about ink and wash, especially on something like this, is if you did miss a spot or didn't quite get the pigment to touch where you wanted the next color, you can definitely go through and make your line just a little bit thicker to delineate that difference between those two areas. So let me skip ahead to the end here, and I'll just go ahead and finish outlining everything, and we'll see you in just a second. And there you have it. There's Pluto. I hope you enjoyed painting Pluto along with me today while we took a look at the Schmincke Horadam Watercolor Limited Edition Metal Box Set of 12 in half pans. It does say it's a limited edition, so I hope you can still get in on it. As always, I will put a link in the description to one of the vendors that is selling this item. I believe I got mine from Jackson's Art Supply, and remember, I'm not affiliated with anyone, and I always encourage you to either use what you have on hand or shop around for your best price. Thanks so much for joining me today, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.